Good morning. Happy Thursday. This is our weekly edition of Anything But Bland. I guess it's a broken record. Every time I start these weekly updates, I say, oh my goodness, this has been a power packed week. It certainly has. So much has happened domestically with the shooting in New York and the arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania, but what has happened internationally with Syria, as well as what's going on in South Korea when martial law was declared. So let's kind of start off with the easy, low hanging fruit. Earlier this week, we had a resurrection of the Murdaugh saga. The Egg Lady has indicated that she's petitioned for a rehearing to the South Carolina Supreme Court, which denied her the right to have the files unsealed in connection with her being removed as a juror during Alex Murdaugh's murder trial by Judge Newman. I think that petition for rehearing is going to lose. And then there has been some scuttlebutt that she will then pursue her remedies through federal court through a possible appeal to the United States Supreme Court. And at the end, we're going to talk about appeals. So I think the Egg Lady and her lawyer, Joe McCullough, are just trying to keep her name in the news and keep her relevant. The next thing is we had a hearing earlier this week in Orangeburg for Russell Laffitte. As everyone knows, Russell was released from prison. He was, I think, 1 year into a 9-year sentence or an 8-year sentence for being convicted in front of Judge Gergel in federal court in 2022. And his case is going to be retried in front of Judge Gergel at the end of March. It was interesting to see Russell. One, he looked like he lost a lot of weight. Two, he definitely looked like this whole ordeal has taken a toll on him, as it would take on any man. I had empathy for him as another human being, but certainly no sympathy for him. I think he made his bed, and he certainly had the last clear chance to stop Alex from doing what he did regarding invading funds that were held in trust in conservatorship for Alex's clients at the Palmetto State Bank. But it was interesting. There was a lot of back and forth. There were 3 issues at the hearing, and he wanted to have his bond restrictions relaxed because he has to wear a federal and a state ankle bracelet. It seems overkill. I think the Judge Taylor, Heath Taylor, a good guy, new judge, said he felt that was overkill. So they're going to look at that. They tried to set a trial date, and there was a lot of back and forth between his lawyers, Mark Moore, and Todd Rutherford, who's in the legislature. Todd is pretty sore these days about anybody who says that, the legislators have this immunity where they can't be forced to try a case for basically 7 months out of the year. It's a very unfair rule. As litigants, you can't get your cases tried if you have a lawyer legislator on the other side, but they can practice law during session when they have this immunity. They can go to court hearings if they want to, do depositions if they want to, attend mediations and settle cases. So it's a completely unfair rule to litigants. And most of the time, when you only have the fall to try cases, most judges, their calendars are completely stacked. And so it just gets pushed to the next year. Judge Taylor said Russell Laffitte's state court fraud trial for 2 weeks in October of 2025. And then the final issue was there is an injunction against him from dissipating his assets. And we were stunned to learn that he has almost $12 million of assets, $10 million and a possible $2 million more. And Mark Moore, his attorney, said that they need to be released so that he could pay for his attorneys and other expenses. And obviously, his wife is entitled to half of that money, and she has not been implicated in anything. So that they're going to try to work things out between the state and Russell Laffitte to relax that injunction that Allison Lee put in place way back when he was originally arrested. And so his attorneys want to get paid because they're going to have a federal court trial and then possibly 3 state court trials. And on December 18th, we're going to see Corey Fleming, and he's also been in prison for about a year and a half. And, he's staring down a 40-month sentence in federal court. And then when that's done, he has 9 more years that were imposed by Judge Newman on the state court guilty plea that he did. He pled guilty in federal court and in state court. And that state court sentence is currently up on appeal because of his lawyer, Debbie Barbier, says it's cruel and unusual under the Eighth Amendment of the United States. And he's going to be in court because he owes restitution pursuant to his guilty plea. And the court has to figure out who's a victim, who's not a victim, how much have people received, and what are they entitled to. For instance, the Satterfields, we contend, are still owed more money, but they have recovered over $9.4 million in total from all different sources. So that's an update on Alex Murdaugh. There was a book that was released by one of the jurors, and Shanna Hirsch wrote the book. Amy Williams, one of the jurors, wrote a book. So that came out at about the same time that my book came out. So that's an interesting development. So let's start talking about the international. Syria has been liberated. Bashar Assad, who has been in power for 24 years, a brutal dictator. They have a prison there where he punishes and tortures his enemies. That's the most brutal prison in the world. I saw some photos last night and videos where the rooms, some of the ceilings are only 3 feet high, so the prisoners have to literally live on their stomachs or their backs or crawl every single day in their cells, and they're not allowed out. This was a surprise because I think it's a paradigm shift for the Middle East. I think it really benefits and could benefit Israel as well as the United States. Syria has been propped up by Russia and by Iran for the last 24 years. Russia has air bases in Syria, and Iran finances a lot of the terrorism that goes through Syria for Hezbollah and Hamas, and weaponry that goes through Syria so that they can attack Israel. The interesting thing is the overthrow of the government took less than 3 days. Turkey, that's always battled Syria and the northern part where the rebels are. And the rebels, they are freedom fighters, but we need to remember that they are Al-Qaeda, that they're ISIS, that they're banded together terrorists. Not as bad as Assad, but they, in their own right, could establish an Islamic State, which would be very problematic because then we would be dealing with not only Afghanistan, but now Syria as a Taliban type of rule. But they overthrew Assad. You saw his palace get ransacked. You saw his car collection of, good morning, Jennifer Carroll, how you doing? You saw his car collection of 100 Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and everything like that. He fled and got asylum in Russia. The interesting part is Russia did not help. They didn't send any money because they are overburdened in Ukraine. And Iran didn't help because they have been decimated with Hezbollah and Hamas, and they don't have a lot of money left. And so Syria was left to fight on its own, and Aleppo was taken, and then they went into Damascus. And so we'll have to wait and see. The new guerrilla leader or the rebel leader of Syria has sworn off a lot of the Taliban and ISIS ways and said that there's going to be a democracy, that women are not going to have to wear burqas. We'll see how that works out. And Israel took advantage of this instability because they bombed the nuts off Syria 2 days ago. They took out every air base. They took out weaponry. They took out the chemical weapons factory. They took out airports, military roads. And I think they sent Syria back generations by what they did. So this is a tremendous victory for Israel, the fact that Bashar Assad has been overthrown. It's a tremendous victory for the United States because Russia clearly doesn't have the manpower, the finances to back state-sponsored terrorist countries like Syria. And I think it's a new day for the Middle East. Look, Israel has taken out Hezbollah. Israel has decimated Hamas. They've taken their tunnels. Israel took over the area in the Golan Heights that was a demilitarized zone where it was being patrolled since 1992, I think, by multi-country forces, and Israel took control of that. So I think it's a big day. The 1974 buffer zone, it's called. I think it's a big day for Israel. The next thing is Luigi Mangione was caught in Altoona, PA. I remain stunned that he was caught by a dedicated McDonald's employee, and he wasn't caught by any of his friends, any of the people he works with, any of the people he associated with, none of his relatives. You can't tell me those photos with those distinctive eyebrows and his very strong face, his Grecian nose, and how strong he looks as an Italian, that his parents, his brothers, his relatives, his friends wouldn't have been able to call in and say, that is somebody I know. Yes, he has been not in contact with his mother since July, and she reported him missing, I think, 16 days before or something like that. But it just doesn't add up for me that people weren't able to identify him. He has some very distinctive looks, so that was disappointing. I think they got him lock, stock, smoke, and barrel. His attorney, Dickey, is saying things that he shouldn't say on the news. He doesn't appear to be very, very professional. I know he's in a difficult spot, but they clearly have the gun. They clearly have fingerprints, which they have to produce, and lawyers will get experts to say that that's only a partial print, or it's maybe more probable than not, or less probable than more probable. Experts can say anything. They're looking for the DNA on the water bottles and different things, but I think what they have is the shell casings match the gun that was found on his body and backpack when he was in McDonald's in Altoona, PA. That's what's keeping him in Pennsylvania, is that gun charge, the ghost guns, which are very scary guns. You know, they can be 3D printed and there's no security number on them to be able to be traced. But the bullets that were found where he said, deny, delay, and depose, which is almost the exact title of a 2010 book about the horrors of the insurance industry, are on the bullet casings, and they match the gun. Plus, when they asked him had he been in New York, supposedly his reaction was he started shaking. So, look, he's entitled to full justice. He's entitled to be proven guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But I think it's going to be a difficult defense. Look, if he really is somebody that was proud of what he did, then he should stand up for it. Don't do this normal, oh, I didn't do it, not guilty. Own it. If that's what you want to be, a martyr for those people that are damaged and injured by the insurance industry, where they don't pay claims on time, or they deny claims, or they don't give approval for experimental surgeries. I understand that, and we'll talk about that, but own it. And he's fighting extradition in New York, where they've charged him for murder and a couple other related charges for the United Healthcare 50-year-old husband with a family of two. I think he's getting lost in this discussion. I found out this morning he came from an 1,800 populated town in Iowa to rise all the way up to being a CEO at 50 years old of 400,000 people. I see why Luigi is being considered a vigilante and a hero by some. Yes, for what he is advocating about the healthcare industry, I have seen it. In my book, My Best Friend is a Felon chapter about Big Danny Snellgrove, my best friend, and his son Daniel, what happened to him when he was discovered to have epilepsy and tumors in his brain, how his surgery was deemed experimental and Danny had to raise the cash on his own. I get it. I've represented people that have been denied disability after they became disabled and had paid disability insurance for years and years and years. I hired an expert who said that these disability insurance companies, their first order of business is to deny 10 claims, and 9 of those denials, the people will not go and hire a lawyer or even consult with a lawyer. And those that hire a lawyer, only 1 in 5 will sue. And of the 5 that sue, maybe only 1 in 10 will get a monster verdict against the insurance company. So it's a numbers game, and I get it. But killing CEOs is not the way to change the system. On Cup of Justice this week, Mandy told me something that was shocking to me. She said that Blue Cross Blue Shield is thinking of enacting in some states an anesthesia limit, meaning that if you have certain surgeries, they will pay for anesthesia for, let's say, an hour if that's what the surgery should take, or 2 hours. And if you go over, you have to pay for yourself, pay the difference yourself. I mean, that's just insane. We pay a lot of money for insurance. Other countries don't, citizens in other countries don't have to deal with it because they have, universal health care coverage. So I certainly understand the debate, but let's not call this guy a hero. He is a punk. He's a criminal. He destroyed a family. He made 2 kids be raised without their father, and the book should be thrown against him. That's how I feel. You may differ, and I respect your opinion, but we cannot resort to killings to try to change policy in our society. Daniel Penny, he had been on trial for 6 weeks for manslaughter of Jordan Neely. He was the strap hanger, homeless street artist who had mental illness and drug issues and started threatening people on one of the subways, and Daniel Penny put him in a headlock. The trial, one of the charges was deemed a hung jury. They then dismissed it. The jury came back after 6 days of deliberation and voted him not guilty. I agree with that verdict. I don't agree again with killing, and I don't think Daniel Penny meant to kill him. Daniel Penny's a trained Marine. This man was threatening everybody on that subway train, in that specific train. In fact, everybody came forward and said, we were scared. We were glad that Daniel Penny subdued him and did what he did. Nobody said that, he had murder in his eyes. Again, it's similar to Bernard Goetz in the 1980s, which started the whole guardian angel thing with Curtis Silla. Bernard Goetz shot somebody on the subway. Look, we need to have safe mass transit in our country, and especially in New York, because it's a financial hub and a cultural hub of the world. So I do agree with that. The big thing this week, in connection with the presidential election of Donald Trump, is Tulsi Gabbard has come to the Hill to talk to the senators, Kash Patel, as well as the continued Pete Hegseth for Department of Defense. Next week is going to be Bobby Kennedy. The interesting thing is that everybody has been well received except Tulsi Gabbard. They found her to be a little bit shy on public policy and really understanding what it means to be the director of national intelligence. They were not satisfied with her answers on why she met with Bashar Assad and had empathy towards Syria and held that they didn't use chemical weapons on their people when they did. She did not give good answers on why she supports Vladimir Putin in Russia and appears to be a shill for Russian propaganda, is what some of the senators said. So I think that she may have trouble, but at the end of the day, I want you to listen to me, at the end of the day, I believe that every single one of these nominees are going to go forward and get approved. And the reason is they cannot go against Donald Trump. They will be primaried. They will be ridiculed by the MAGA party, MAGA part of the Republican Party. And so they can say all they want publicly about their concerns about Kash Patel and all these nominees and that they aren't qualified, and they're not. They simply are not. But the fact of the matter is, I think since 1990, only two people in a party have voted against the nominees of the president who puts up cabinet officials. And Trump has a stranglehold on the Republican Party. He won, and he deserves the right to put his nominees in as the argument. I disagree. I think the Senate is supposed to be a deliberative body. They're supposed to advise and consent. So at the end of the day, it'll take five Republican senators to defect and these cabinet officials not to be approved. It will not happen. You may have Lisa Murkowski doing one voting against, or Susan Collins, or Joni Ernst. But there's 53 Republican senators, plus J.D. Vance is the vice president tie vote. And so you're not going to get five. You may get three, and J.D. Vance will break the tie. So I think at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of screaming, sound, and fury, but it's going to signify nothing. I think these cabinet officials are going to get approved unless something comes out dramatically which changes the equation, and they withdraw. But I don't think they're going to be voted down. I think some may end up withdrawing. They may end up being replaced. Depends on what it comes down. Listen, let's go back and look at the 1990s. There were some cabinet selections, Zoe Baird, and Ginsburg, who was going Doug Ginsburg, who was going to go to the United States Supreme Court. They lost their cabinet positions in the Supreme Court seats because of the nanny tax. They had undocumented nannies that were not documented illegal immigrants, and they weren't paying taxes on them. And so they lost their seat because of the nanny tax. Doug Ginsburg, because he had tried marijuana in college. Look at the difference. Those people lost their opportunities for just that. Pete Hegseth, is being accused of alcoholism. He's being accused of being abusive towards women. Bobby Kennedy and all his stuff, Kash Patel and his craziness. The standard certainly has been relaxed. So that's something that I think we should talk about. So I just think that even though Tulsi Gabbard is one of the worst prepared people to be in national intelligence, I think she's going to be approved. Again, let's talk about pardons. I don't think there's going to be the mass pardon. Certainly Adam Schiff came out yesterday and said he didn't want it. I was extremely happy to see Democratic Senator, who I absolutely adore and love, Amy Klobuchar, who I think has gone too far in the background in the Democratic Party. She came out and just excoriated President Biden for the pardon of Hunter Biden. I think it's one of the worst things that ever happened. Again, I told you that I agree that a father would always pardon his son, but he went back on his word. And I think it's going to greenlight Trump for pardoning a lot of people, including the January 6th convicted people and those that are charged. Now, remember, big difference between Hunter Biden and what he did. It was a victimless crime. He, lied on his gun application and supposedly didn't pay taxes on $1 million of income. That's a victimless crime. What the January 6 people did is not a victimless crime. They hurt people. They committed property damage on the U.S. Capitol. They endangered the life of elected officials. They threatened to hang Mike Pence. So it's not an apples and apples when you pardon them. But the thing that I liked about Amy Klobuchar is she said, most importantly, we need to reform the whole pardon system. That, it started with Clinton when he pardoned Mark Risch, who had $144 million or $44 million of income taxes owed and was convicted and left and went to Switzerland. He gave him a pardon. That's when it started to really be bad. The pardon is meant for people that are convicted who have genuine remorse and do good. That is what a pardon is meant for. So I agree with Amy Klobuchar that is something that we should work towards. interesting. Donald Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle, who is, used to be on Fox News, the 5 at 5. She was married to the California governor, Newsom, Gavin Newsom. She was engaged to Donald Trump Jr. They've been together for 5 years. She's 55 years old. He's 45 years old. There had been rumors earlier this summer that he had been seen with this socialite from Palm Beach, holding hands and kissing. But they still maintained through the convention and through the election that the engagement was still on. Now, since the election's over, it was announced that they're no longer together, the engagement's off, and lo and behold, Kimberly gets an ambassadorship to Greece. I get that she could possibly have talked about things that happened in the Trump family and in the campaign. She was heavily involved in the campaign. I don't want to say that's a payoff, but it sure looks like a reward for the breakup of that relationship and keeping her mouth quiet in maybe what she knows. So that's an interesting thing. Kari Lake, who ran for Senate and governor of Arizona and lost both elections, former newscaster in Arizona for 20 years. She has been given in charge by Donald Trump of the American news media and radio stations, all the things that are projected to the world about American businesses, politics, and everything. She's been put in charge of that. So she's been a loyalist to Donald Trump. So I certainly can see that happening. California was hit with a 7.0 earthquake last week. There was a tsunami warning. So that is scary. There's so much earthquakes happening now all across this country. The South Korean prime minister has survived impeachment because his party didn't vote for it, but he should have been impeached, declaring martial law. It was amazing. He apologized for his actions to the nation. That shows an unstable character on his part, so I don't think he should be put in back as prime minister. That's the stablest democracy in the Asian Peninsula. So that's the interesting thing. Juan Soto, ladies and gentlemen, signed a $765 million contract with the New York Mets. The Yankees went after him. They were going to give him $760 million over 16 years. He got $765 million over 15 years. He had the season of his career with the Yankees this year, and he didn't have any loyalty to them. He went across town to the subway rivals. They gave him an entire suite, and if you see how much those suites go for, $15,000 to $20,000 a game. They gave him a suite for his entire career. There's a 5-year option both ways on this contract. After 5 years, he can opt out. I think it's a benefit for the Yankees because $765 million for one player can go a long way for a lot of younger players and a lot of position players. So let the Mets. Steve Cohen is the new George Steinbrenner. He will outbid everybody. So I am a Juan Soto fan. I am a Yankees Philly fan, and a Braves fan. But I think that he is somebody that is only consumed by money. I think it's dangerous for the sport because I think there's only 5 or 6 or 7 teams that are going to be able to compete for these big-time players going forward. What ends up happening is a pitcher like Paul Skeets, the pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who is dating Olivia Dunn, who came from LSU. Pittsburgh isn't going to be able to keep him after 3 years once his rookie contract's done. They're not going to be able to afford a $500 million player because they're a mid-market team, the Minnesota Twins, all these type of teams, Oakland A's. It's always going to come down to the Phillies, the Braves, the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, and the Padres for being able to afford these big-time free agents. And I think baseball is going to suffer. We had the playoffs announced. I'm very upset that South Carolina did not make the playoffs. I think they are one of the top 12 best teams in the country. Clemson got in. They lost to South Carolina. They lost to North Carolina State. They lost to Georgia, but they won the ACC and got an automatic bid. I don't understand how Alabama didn't get in over SMU. And SMU was ranked higher in the final poll than Clemson, and Clemson beat them in the ACC. Just stunned that SMU got in. They didn't beat anybody of note, and they got in over Alabama. SEC only has 3 teams, which is inconceivable, and yet the Big Ten has 4 teams in the playoffs that are coming up, the 12-team playoffs. And amazingly, Penn State was rated higher, 2 positions higher than Ohio State, and I'm a Penn State fan, but Ohio State beat Penn State, and Penn State has never beaten a top 10 team, and Ohio State has. And Penn State has the easiest path to get to the championship. They only have to go through SMU and Boise State. Not that they're not good teams, but they're certainly not of the caliber of Oregon, of Ohio State, and all these other teams, Arizona State. So that is the state of college football. Bill Belichick, unbelievable, is going to be the coach of the University of North Carolina. He's going to bring Matt Patricia. He's going to bring McDaniel. He's going to bring his 2 sons, one who's a defensive coordinator for the University of Washington. I think Belichick will win 8 or 9 games in his first season. I think he knows football. I think kids are going to want to come to UNC. They want to play for him, and one are going to get to the pros. I think Belichick snubbed his nose at the NFL because they were not interested in interviewing him last year. He only had 1 interview, which was with the Atlanta Falcons. And I got to tell you, Raheem, I don't know his last name, Raheem, who's the coach of the Falcons, good coach. He's not a Belichick. The Falcons have a good team. Belichick would have won 3 or 4 more games than Raheem has won this season. Belichick obviously doesn't care about getting those 15 more victories to pass Don Shula for the all-time winningest record of an NFL coach. I don't think it's a big record. I think Belichick was more proud of his 8 Super Bowls, 1 that he won with Parcells and 7 on his own with the Patriots. So I think he'll coach. I think he'll turn that team around. It's a 3-year, $30 million contract. I think his son Steve is going to be the coach in waiting, and I think it's going to be very interesting. And Dabo Swinney and Florida State and Miami, you got another thing coming when you got Bill Belichick on the other side of the sidelines. So that's it for the news. Let's talk about my book for a second. We had an unbelievable book signing event at Sassafras Bookstore in Buford last Saturday. Renee came with me. About 60 people showed up and bought books or brought their books, and I signed the books, sold some bobbleheads. The nicest people I've ever met who came. We spent a lot of time talking. Lovely couple came from Tennessee. Another person drove from Ohio. Really excited about it. We're trying to set up a book signing in Lexington, where I live here, before Christmas. All the books are coming in. People are posting unbelievable photographs with their dogs in the books, and we're putting them out there, and it's a lot of fun. And I am going to come up with a system where if you want me to sign your book, I will have a sticker that you could put on the inside of your jacket. I will personalize the message and send you the sticker if you contact me. So we're working on that for the next 2 weeks. So really excited about that. I appreciate the support on the book, getting some good reviews on it on Amazon and in certain Greenville News and USA Today. So really excited about that. Rebecca asked, what are the chances do you think the egg lady has of the United States Supreme Court hearing her case? I told you I think it's Slim Jim and none, and Slim and Jim haven't been around in a long time. I don't think our Supreme Court's going to give her a rehearing on that. I think they're going to deny her petition for rehearing, and if she decides to appeal to the Supreme Court, I don't think they're going to take it. It's not an important enough issue. Second one, Saturday's asked, can a lawyer give you a check dated in 1995 with a routing number from 2008? Can I reopen this case on the grounds of fraud? The answer is it depends. but probably not, because you're on notice when you get the check that the date is off. And the standard is, South Carolina's a 3-year statute of limitations for fraud. The standard is, should a reasonable person have, did you know, or should a reasonable person have known that a cause of action existed? So I think you would be time barred if you knew in 1995 or 2008 that a check was issued wrong. Here's the issue on appeal by Cassidy. She said, after a trial, you have 30 days to file an appeal. Those issues can continue to be fought till your appeals run out. Does a 132-page appeal have first-time claims all this time later? Can they endlessly add new items to the appeal? Let me explain how appeals work. At a trial, or during a pretrial hearing, you have to take exception and put on the record the grounds for your exception to the judge's ruling, a ruling that he either denies a motion, doesn't let in certain evidence, lets testimony in that he shouldn't, strikes jurors that he shouldn't strike, seats a juror that he shouldn't seat. You have to take exception, and it has to be on the court record. Some appeals are interlocutory, which means you have to appeal or you can appeal right then to stop it. Other types of appeals are not interlocutory, and you appeal at the end of the case. When you appeal, you do a notice of appeal and you set forth the issues that you're appealing on. 6 issues. That's it. And those issues are ruled upon by an appellate court. If you don't like the ruling, you go to the next highest court. Or if you want to get to federal court and you think there's a constitutional issue or a statutory issue that the United States Supreme Court would be interested in, you appeal there, and they'll make a decision whether to take your case. But you can't add new issues on appeal. Those are the original issues that you appeal on, because otherwise people can keep adding to them. And an appellate court above another appellate court looks at what that appellate court ruled upon, so they can't add new things to it. Now, newly discovered evidence under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure and State Rule 60B, if there was new evidence that wasn't available, that may be an issue that you can include on appeal, but it's very rare. So that's what we have. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. I want everybody to have a good, safe weekend. Got really cold here, and go out there and buy those books, Anything But Bland. Thank you very much.